All right, this is Cliff in the Doorway too, hanging out with Adam of Pando and Cave Dweller. We're going to talk about both of his projects today. How lucky he is. Um, anyway, thanks for doing this. Really do appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I'll keep it as short as possible so you can have dinner like I'm going to as well after all this.
Yeah, no time restraints, man. Don't worry
So,
about it. Thanks for having me on.
absolutely, absolutely. So Adam, the first thing I kind of want to talk about is uh, how do you differentiate the two projects like Cave Dweller and Pando? Because there's a lot of similarities, in my opinion, on both the projects.
There's a lot of similarities because your personality comes out no matter what instrument that it is that you're playing. Everybody has like a certain characteristic that they have, regardless of whatever instrument they pick up. So whether you're playing saxophone, guitar, drums, piano, you have like a certain tone. You notice it when you play with other musicians. That's what chemistry is. So you
Mhm.
guys kind of like bounce off of each other. So when I'm playing Cave Dweller, um, it's all like by myself. So you're only hearing the parts of me that you're hearing combined with Matt and Pando. Whereas
Mhm.
with Pando, you get kind of like those combined oddball elements. And me and Matt are pretty similar, which is why we get along quite well. Very different in terms of like our approaches to things, which is why Pando sounds the way that it does and why we work so well together. But personality wise, coming out with the influences in the music and things like that are pretty similar. So I think that's probably where you're hearing some of that combination of things.
Cool. No, that's awesome. I actually heard Pando because, ironically enough, we are label mates on the same label. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah. So, Stu kind of sent me over some stuff, and I was really impressed with the Pando stuff. And I didn't even know Cave Dweller was you. So, honestly, he sent it to me and just said, "Check this out. I think you're gonna dig it." And then I looked at the name and I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on one second. That's the guy from Pando. All right,
Yeah,
not."
yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of want to separate the two projects and talk a little bit about each one. So the first one I want to do is Pando because that's what I heard first.
Sure.
Um, so I am going to label it, and I know labeling is really annoying to people, but I'm going to do it anyway because if I don't, there's just no way for
Yeah,
me to
dude. It's easy
yeah,
conversation, man.
yeah, have this conversation. So the best way I can explain it is like noisy Avant Black Death with a lot of old school industrial elements. And what I mean by old school industrial elements is like that 70s England, like throbbing grizzle kind of vibes that are in it. Were you always trying to mix like the lo-fi and the weird black metal sounds with kind of industrial elements as well, or was that something that just kind of always came along?
No, not at all, actually. So the first album that we did was Negligible Senescence.
Hmm.
And the one of the tracks on that album is called Residue because it was literally just the leftover shit that we didn't know what to do with it. And we kind of put it all together and it worked. And that's just what became of it. And Negligible Senescence, we were working on for probably like a year or two. And uh, Matt is totally opposite of me when it comes to um, artistic influences. He is way more of a visual artist than he is audio, whereas I'm more of the audio kind of musician or whatever you want to call it. I practice music as my art form.
Sure.
And so he would probably tell you in a conversation that he actually thinks that the music is the more important of the Pando project. Whereas I'm the opposite. I consider the visual art to be the most important. So we have that mutual respect of each other's chosen mediums. Um, Negligible Senescence, the entirety of that album was recorded with cell phones and a Tascam tape recorder, one of those 4-track 414s or something like
Yeah.
that. And it was just because that's what we had access to at the time. I was editing everything with either tape or Audacity. I had no access to any kind of fancy Pro Tools or anything like that at the time. We tried getting it to be recorded by a couple friends of ours, and they were just very unreliable. So I just said, fuck it, I'm going to try and do my best with what I have. And that's how those sounds came to be. The only reason why, like, some of the stuff probably sounds more like industrial produced is because, like, those were the instruments that were, like, really clean and able to, like, be recorded, like, directly in, as opposed to when we did, like, the live instruments, because we had to record the entire, like, the both of us together in one room. Some of the music, the more bluesy track on there, Runt, is literally a cell phone just tossed in the corner of a room. That's it. There's no alternate editing or anything like that. We just threw it in the corner of the room. That's what we had access to.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. So that's what I was going to kind of ask, which is really, you kind of answered it already, but that's cool. We're going to dig a little deeper into it. It almost sounded like it was that old Tascam 4-track lo-fi aesthetic because it was out of necessity, not out of like, that you had it. So very cool. And you can kind of feel the struggle of, we need to make this sound as good as possible with what we have.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Okay. And so I'm going to ask, why only 2 releases out of your whole catalog to Aesthetic Death? Like, why not have all of it kind of come out there? Because Stu, I know a lot of people, this is going to be behind the curtain kind of talk, but like, if he loves you, he loves you. Like, he kind of like full on jumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's like he and I sometimes have 3-hour conversations on something that I would never even think that we're gonna have that conversation about.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah. So why just the 2 records on Aesthetic Death so far? Why not release all the cool self-release stuff? Because I've listened to it and it's all worthy of it. Like, is that something that's coming or?
Well, we have the most recent Pando album that's supposed to be on its way. Kind of COVID fucked everything up.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the other tracks we kind of look as more being like EPs,
okay,
essentially, or kind of like collections of material. And really, like, the 3 LPs are the ones that we basically sent over to Stu and he put out. So Negligible Senescence, Hydrith, and now Rights.
Mm-hmm.
And the other albums that we have, we're not as like attached to them, I guess.
Gotcha.
And part of it was, like I was saying with Negligible Senescence, we weren't even sure that it was going to be a thing. When Matt and I first met, we met through mutual friends at like a band rehearsal that I was playing in a band with at the time. And the stuff that I played before him was like vastly different. It probably doesn't sound like it, but I actually used to play in like a technical death metal band that was just doing like 300 beats per minute bullshit, sweep picking all the time. And when I met Matt, I had to slow down. But the thing that got us to really click was we were talking about art, visual art, not like music and stuff. And that's where we kicked it off. And there kind of became this whole process over the course of like several years where we would have all like this pent up shit where we would go a whole week of dealing with whatever we were dealing with during the week, family stuff, chaos of work, everything in between. And we'd meet up on Fridays and we would stay up till fucking ass early in the morning.
Yep.
Just playing music or building things, working on sculptures and paintings and things like that, and just joking the whole night. And what spawned from like those nights ended up becoming Negligible Senescence. And Matt originally said he didn't even care to put out music. Matt still doesn't care to put out music. It's just these albums become things that are these collections of material that tend to work in some kind of concept that we're feeling at the time. And that's how it comes to be.
Nice. Very cool. So how would you describe Pando to someone that's never heard it? And let's say it's going to be the very first time, because I, I'll give you my interpretation of it
Yeah,
after.
yeah. Go ahead.
But,
Go ahead.
yeah. But like I said, I would really love to get it from you first, and then I'll kind of give you what I have, because like, um, I have the hardest time trying to like, hey, check this out. It's like X or it's like Y, because it's not like X or like Y. It's like X, Y, Z, K, Y, all of it. Like there's like 11 bands. I want to say like there's a little bit of this, there's a little bit of that, there's a little bit of this. How do you describe it? Do you say it's more metal? Do you say it's more experimental? Do you say it's more avant-garde? Like if you can in words,
Yeah.
but it's a
Horror movie soundtrack. um, a friend of mine once said after listening to the first track off of Hiereth that he felt like he was curled up into a ball on a cement floor in some dude's basement, chained up to a radiator. Um, I don't know. Like, so I don't feel that Pando has put out a single metal album up until this most recent one,
okay.
right? Negligible Senescence, if you took all of the like blackened kind of screaming and shit from it, there's no part of it that's metal.
Right.
There's not a single stick of it that is even remotely metal. I think there's maybe like a blast beat at one point, and that's it. Um, Same thing, like Higher Earth gets pretty like dismal in a couple spots, but again, I don't know that I would really categorize it as metal. It's like it's because of how we like, you know, create the material, I guess, which is usually just from like some kind of jam that we have where we're feeding off of each other. It feels a lot like those krautrock rock bands from like the 70s that would just stick a recorder in the middle of the
Yeah.
room and play some stuff. And you're hearing like, you know, two guys like actually have an interaction with each other, a conversation. And then all the crazy shit afterwards is us putting in like our kind of artistic 2 cents into it so that we're not bored, you know, when you're making your own music, you get bored sitting there and listening to it over and over and over again.
Yes.
So that's that's probably the best way that I can explain it is it's just like really dismal shit. I for to for like long story short to someone that like doesn't know anything about music, like a lot of my family will not listen to my shit because they're like they're blue collar,
Yeah.
like super pristine people. I'm from an area of Massachusetts where I regularly visit is this place up in Northampton, and they're
Mhm.
way more into the art scene. My family thinks I'm a fucking nut job compared to the rest of them. So it's it's just kind of I refer long story short, I say that it's like some kind of metal. That's
Okay.
it.
No, that's cool. So I'm gonna give you my impression because I just really love to kind of see feedback. So the best way I've been describing it to people, and it's a little descriptive, so just give me a moment so you
Yeah,
can kind
no.
of listen to it. All right. So I kind of explain it as if you mixed a really depressing spaghetti western mixed with a horror movie and the coolest German noise rock band that you've ever mixed together. And that's
Yeah,
yeah, all right, cool.
I'll
And and
take that.
and normally they're like, put it on. Because like now they want to hear it.
Yeah.
Um, but you have so many, especially with like Pando, you have so many to me like spaghetti western kind of vibes. And I think it's just the bluesy element of what's coming through
Yeah.
that I that I almost and I know this is way off the list, but I'm waiting for like Clint Eastwood to walk out and like guns blazing sometimes with what you're playing because it just feels like a very Pale Rider kind of moment to me at times.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So yeah, I just like it really was one of the more so another thing, like sidebar, but I do this a lot in my interviews and people seem to like it, so I don't care. It's awesome. The label that you and I are on is a very interesting label.
Oh
He
yeah.
he is not the traditional label. He is not signed the contracts on a dotted line. I'm going to be the label. I'm not going to talk to you. He's just like you and I, like has families, like talks about his family all the time to me, like talks to me about new bands that like he may never even sign, but just because he heard something that was like completely twisted in his head, he's like,
Hmm.
check this shit out and just like listen to me with me and like tell me what you think. Like, you know, it's cool. Like I just love when he does stuff like that. And he also like deeply gives a shit about the artists that are on his label.
Yeah, yeah, he does.
Yeah, and like I'm working on artwork with him right now, and he's literally, "Are you sure you're happy? Are you sure?" I've never like ever worked with another label that's been like that. So I think the reason why I love Pando so much is because it gives me the same feeling of when I make music. It's kind of just it is what it is. Like you're not trying to make something. At the end of the day, what it becomes, you guys are so happy with that you just like, you know, it's not like I'm sure it's been planned, like a lot of it, but it feels like sometimes you just do what you want to make it happen. And am I way off base with that or?
No, you're spot on. It's
Okay.
all everything that you hear in Pando is a completely an emotional response to whatever is
Nice.
happening at the time. Um, it's as heartfelt as it is because they're direct responses to these particular moments. And that's part of the reason why, since we've released the Pando albums, even the Cave Dweller album, since they've been out, I haven't listened to a single one of them. I don't re-listen to them because I'm past that point in my life.
Sure.
And whatever I went through was had enough of an impact on me that I was feeling it and so it needed to come out. It's my outlet. This is like not necessarily like who I am, it's my responses to the things in my life about the things that I am. And so these interactions and these feelings as they have to be kind of like portrayed don't have a choice to be portrayed any other way. This is just how we're feeling at the time. And so it's it's not, I don't know, it's kind of a hard thing to put into words, and that's
Yeah.
why you make the music and the art to begin with, is so that you don't have to use the words to kind of explain it. So yeah, it's an emotional response to whatever is happening at the time. I always like to tell people that I don't listen to music that I make.
Yeah.
So I used to listen to a shit ton of like black and death metal, and I still put on like Portal and stuff like that from
Yeah.
Australian crap. Um, but I actually listen to like a lot of jazz, and it doesn't seem like it, but I listen to a lot of jazz. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Actually, going by your review of the Cave Dweller album made me look up Nick Cave. I've never listened to Nick Cave before. And
Wow.
and so I've been listening to Nick Cave recently, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I could kind of hear where he got some of this shit. So that's cool.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, Nick Cave is pretty awesome. Um, so let's move on to Cave Dweller because this is probably the best place to do it. I am going to describe this to you in the best, most professional way possible that I
Yeah.
can because uh, I know this is all just you, but that Walter Goodman record is probably the most fucked up, wonderfully magical record that I've listened to in quite some time.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
and I kind of want to say like, and here's what I hear, and then we're gonna go delve into this record because I know this is not a record for everyone by any means, but
Yeah.
for people that like this kind of stuff, it's gonna blow their mind. So like, so it reminds me of, and this is kind of just artists that kind of go through the moments while I'm listening to it. Um, you remind me a lot of early Neil Young. You remind me a lot of Sebado. You remind me a lot of Sonic Youth. You remind me of a lot of a band called God Is My Co-Pilot, which is kind of like this really fucked up avant-garde prog noise, I don't know, weirdo band. There's a band called Built to Spill from Washington that you kind of like give me these vibes on. And then you kind of mix it all together. And here's my biggest praise is someday you need to work with John Zorn because I really feel like you and John Zorn would make a goddamn amazing record. Um, uh, my buddy released some music on Zadik, which is Zorn's label, and like I think would absolutely love you. So I'm just honestly telling you, like, this is what I hear. So avant-garde folksy noise is like the best way I can kind of explain Cave Dweller to a listener. Um, where did it come from? How did it come? And uh, is there going to be more? I guess that's going to be my
Yeah.
first question for you.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to answer there. um, well, first off, John Zorn is awesome. So what a great thing. That was a really big compliment for me. Thanks, man.
Cool.
Those other bands, haven't heard a single one of them. Haven't listened to a single one of them. So I mean, it's stuff to look up into, I guess, because I'm always looking for new music and shit. Cave Dweller started as me writing stuff by myself and realizing that some of the material didn't fit with what was being done in Pando. I think it's because Pando to me is all about my relationship with Matt and the way that our friendship becomes this observation of whatever it is that we're going through. Literally, there's a song off of Highereth, Samsara, that is about how at this point in our life, Matt was going through some shit, so I had to pull him out of it. And then I went through some shit, so Matt had to pull me out of it, and this back and forth pull. And Cave Dweller is all about being alone. And it's a totally different feeling. Pando, I have someone to fall back on. Cave Dweller is very much just by myself. And it's kind of struggling with these feelings of being in a society that kind of adheres to like this pre-existing paradigm that you don't necessarily agree with. And so being around people can ultimately be more alone than being by yourself. And I was going through quite a bit trying to kind of figure out my own, I guess, like mental turmoil in a way. After kind of like getting diagnosed with bipolar and shit, it made me kind of like review some of the things within my life. And in doing so, made me kind of get to this point where I realized that I needed to do something on my own. And so I started to kind of fall back into love with the guitar again. A lot of Pando was me struggling with the fact that I absolutely hate like musical jobs. I hate when like one musician is like the set guitarist and the set bassist and the set drummer. You never see like in a live set where someone just switches instruments, which to me would be the coolest shit. And so Cave Dweller was me kind of like experimenting and trying to figure out what I can get away with on my own. And also me kind of trying to feel out mentally and emotionally what I was capable of getting in touch with. My environment is a pretty big factor in my creativity. And so a lot of the songs in Cave Dweller are me going on hikes or like excavations and shit like that out in the woods, or climbing up some mountain nearby, and just taking a pen and paper with me. And I'll sit there and I'll jot down poetry or things that are kind of coming to mind. A lot of times I just go out and I don't do shit and I just sit up on a rock for hours and just enjoy it. And sitting down and kind of getting in the habit of picking up a guitar and just allowing the first thing that happens to happen and allowing that to be it. Not worrying about like being so like precise and like what it is that I'm tuning the guitar to, which made me like open myself up more to like open tunings and kind of like oddball finger picking and things like that. Severely limiting myself more, I think, too. I think also part of it was I got really annoyed sitting at like the computer with the Pando stuff and having to constantly like sit there with the edits and shit, that I wanted to limit myself even more and see what ways that I could bring in some of more of these organic sounds and not hide behind like an electric guitar. Wanting to take kind of the yin to the yang, I guess, and figure out ways of accepting this darkness without having to fall back on just like fucking death metal chugging the whole time. Trying to think of ways to make the content heavy in a mature way rather than the fallback of just like sweep picking and shit all the time.
Cool. So that kind of brings me into the next thing I was going to talk about is, yeah, Cave Dweller and Pando both to me have a very kind of heathenistic kind of nature-based feel to them. And I kind of wanted to ask, especially with Cave Dweller, is that a very personal subject for you? Because it almost feels like with Cave Dweller, there are some topics that lyrically are there, but there's some really deeper meanings going on. And I kind of was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Cave Dweller record as whole, as what the actual like theme or story is about. Like what was the end result of the record?
Oh yeah, dude, you can totally dig into this as much as you want for answers for me. I'm more than happy to talk about it. It's just one of those things that I have a hard time kind of like pulling out information unless it's a question, I guess.
Yeah.
So first off, I guess, yeah, we're from New England, and we're from part of New England that's Western Mass. I think a lot of times when people hear Massachusetts from anywhere out of state or anywhere like out of country even, they just immediately assume Boston. They think just like Massachusetts is all fucking Boston for whatever reason. Western Mass is closer to like upstate New York and Vermont.
It's
In
all
terms
mountains,
of
right?
it's basically all, and our mountains like pale in comparison to like the Pacific Northwest. I mean, their shit's like 1,500 foot elevation, stuff like that. Tallest mountain we have over here is Mount Washington in New Hampshire up in the Whites, and it's something like 6,000 feet elevation. So it's a lot smaller, nothing nearly as colossus. But we also have like mountains like in Acadia National that just drop right into the ocean. And I'd like to kind of tell people that even though our mountains aren't as tall, our forests are like way the hell older. So a lot more shit has died here. There's a lot more like kind of creepy stories because of like what's happened with Massachusetts. We are home to basically just the beginning of Slaughterville. So you have all this kind of rich, interesting history. Everybody would bring up the Salem witch trials. That's why we all say wicked here and shit like that. But yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on environment here. It's impossible to kind of not drive anywhere up this way and not see any of like kind of the beautiful byways and the evergreen trees. We got a lot of fucking oak trees up here. There's tons of people that are coming up from the south just to look at the leaves when they turn colors. And we're right next to the Mohawk Trail.
Yeah.
So other than really like hiking and blowing tons of bullshit on consumerist garbage, there's really not a whole hell of a lot else to do. So hiking becomes kind of like the pastime to like get away from society. And that becomes like a huge draw in the music, especially when you're kind of like an art major. It's something that you draw from. Uh, Math's an art major. I'm a philosophy major.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a reason why the Romantic era poets and shit basically all wrote about nature. There's a reason why all haikus in, you know, Taoism and Zen Buddhism, it's all based around kind of nature. So that becomes a huge influence. And I feel like it's a huge influence for a lot of bands, a lot of art in general.
Cool. That's awesome. So that's kind of what I was wondering because I lived up there for a lot of years. I lived in Rhode Island for about 7 years. I lived up in Peabody, Mass, like right outside of Boston for a while,
Yeah, yeah.
and I played in the Hamptons. So like yeah, like I know the areas you're talking about. The other kind of thing that I kind of feel with Cave Dweller more is, and I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into this is. Uh, so you say philosophy, and like I really think sometimes some of the songs are reactionary to the world around you right now more than anything, because like some of the spoken word stuff is really powerful, and I kind of wanted you to like take some specific moments and just like is is the world an ugly place to you? Because sometimes I feel like that. Yeah, like because I feel like listening to the Cave Dweller record, and I do it like this because I'd rather you kind of open up. We're having a good conversation, so I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah. Is the world an ugly place to you, and you're just kind of showing the beauty that you see inside the ugliness? Like that's almost what Cave Dweller feels like to me.
Yeah. All right. That's kind of a loaded question. So I think that life is kind of what you make it. And it's not about how your life is kind of filled with this insufferable place. It's about your perspective on it. And so different moments in everyone's life can kind of put them in these places of disarray. And it takes a certain perspective to kind of pull you out of it. I feel like everyone kind of has a place in different societies or different areas. There's like callings to things.
Mhm.
And I think like one of the biggest kind of issues that our society has is that it's lost its touch with some of these kind of I don't know what you would call them, just like romantic archetypes. Um, we've become so infatuated with kind of these really mundane things, materialisms, and things like that. And it can really pull you into like a dismal place as you become attached to these things. And so it's especially dismal when you don't feel like you belong in the society that you exist in. And it's not even a fault of the society necessarily. It's a fault of the being born in the wrong time or being born in the wrong place. And it's nothing that's kind of in the individual's control. And there's this really great quote from Joseph Campbell. I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell at all. He's or was this really awesome mythologist, and he came up in a lot of my studies in school. Joseph Campbell once said that the modern artists are the shaman of the old tribes. And so what you have currently is this lifestyle where everything is because of evolution and things like that and the way that our society has grown from these like small like tribal communes way back when um back in the tribes, you had carpenters, you had chiefs, you had people who did set jobs.
Yep.
And nowadays, we still have those jobs. We still have those things that work for those particular groups of people. But the shaman have been kind of forgotten. The shaman of the past were the myth makers. They were the ones that had this crazy fucked up thing that happened to them in early childhood, or they had a different view on things within their tribe, and their tribe looked to them to create the myth that brings everybody together. Nowadays, it's just looked at as like a mental disorder, and there's no place for them. They look at it as, our societies view these individuals that have these senses of creativity oftentimes as not functioning within the society. I can't tell you how many times that I've heard that, getting a liberal arts degree does nothing for you, especially growing up in a blue collar family. I was told as a kid, your art's great, that painting's great, this picture's great, or whatever, and it'll look good on like the refrigerator, but you need a job. It's never brought up as like, our society doesn't make it so that there's jobs or things or creative outlets for these individual groups of people, which is another deep conversation in itself. But that kind of sense of feeling outcast from your society can put you in a real state of loneliness. And nowadays we have internet and shit. So we have like, we're starting to kind of have these means to get out these creative outlets and these things to kind of get in touch with people that we weren't able to get in touch with for so long. For the longest time, you didn't know an artist until they fucking died. You had no idea who the artist was until after something happened to them. And so things, because of like technology and shit, are starting to like create this sense of like pop culture and stuff again, which is really kind of like a beautiful thing. But at the same time, technology is like fucking awful, and it's also so it's like, a double-edged sword. So yeah, I feel like this kind of the loneliness that you're hearing on Cave Dweller is a direct response to my feelings of existing within the environment that I do. I feel more deeply connected to nature and the peacefulness of being within myself, I guess, than I do within this society that I exist within. And so Cave Dweller is me coming to terms with the fact that meditations on nature are really important for me. And so going out into the woods and having kind of like this societal detox is a really important thing to make sure that my sanity remains. But I'm not a fucking Tibetan monk living up in the Himalayas, where nothing stressful is going to happen. Everybody's got to go back to fucking their regular lives. So it's, how the hell do I bring this feeling that I get being out in the forest back with me so that I can have it when I'm in my normal day-to-day life, taking care of my kid, being a dad, and having a fiance? Like, how the fuck do I maintain this thing? And so a lot of Cave Dweller is just kind of like accepting that there is this dark, uncomfortable, dismal side of everything, the Carl Jung, the shadow, and living with it, not out of spite of it, but living with it because it's two sides of the same coin. You can't know light without the dark. And that's why there's those contrasts in Cave Dweller. There's that, at least what I've tried to convey, these moments of beauty juxtaposed with this like really ugliness. And those are the moments that I find in my life are like the most beautiful. So absolutely, I'm going to highlight those. And if someone else finds shit in those things, great. That's the best. When I can connect someone as I would have, as supposedly maybe a shaman in the past, coming forward into this modern age, it means that I'm able to create some kind of community where someone can understand my language that I only know in my head.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool. Um, just a diatribe for a second. You touched a nerve, which was pretty cool for me too. So, my dad was a New Jersey state trooper, and like he used to buy me musical gear because he loved my hobby. So
Yeah.
I love the way you said that. And then one time, he like I think I was about 18 or 19. He wanted to come see me perform, and we were doing a pretty big show with a bunch of big bands in Asbury Park, New Jersey, at a place called the Stone Pony, which is a kind of a legendary venue.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought we were just like a little small time, like, hey, he's having fun with his friends. And then he saw 200 people like interact with me and sing along. And the best comment I ever had in my life was like, oh, this isn't a hobby. This is real. Like
Yeah.
like all of a sudden the world woke up and he goes, you are something in this world. Like
Fucking awesome, man.
yeah, right. Like he's like,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
he's like, and then all of a sudden he was like, he took complete interest in what I did. So like, I love that kind of,
Yeah. No,
that's exactly the.
and I feel like it's important to state that I didn't have a shitty childhood. I had a great childhood. My parents were seriously the best parents in the world. And they were very supported. It's just they themselves grew up very blue collar.
Right.
So how do you like respond to a child that is not this?
Right.
And I think when the first when Negligible Senescence came out, so Negligible Senescence is about my grandmother, who was like a second mother to me. It was about her passing. And so that's my mother's mother. And when that came out and she saw the artwork for it and heard like that I took I called up my grandmother after she passed away. I called her cell phone and I recorded the voicemail of her voice and I put it in one of the tracks. And when she heard that, that was when my mother realized like, oh, wow, like these are like you're doing a thing. This is like insane.
Yeah.
You know?
Cool. No, awesome. I just got a couple more questions and then we're gonna kind of wrap this up. But
Yeah.
again, my next question is on top of that, what's your impression of this new digital underground? Like, I really feel like artists like ourselves that we're never going to be rich, we're never going to be famous, we're never gonna be on a Billboard charts. That's not what we're looking for. But like Bandcamp and SoundCloud are they remind me of the old 80s tape trading and 90s tape trading kind of vibe to me. Uh, how do you feel that that has gotten your music or your art out to people like never before? Is it something that is like that, like I'm talking about a resurgence of the old zine and tape trading days, or is it something brand new in your mind?
Yeah, it's pretty it reminds me a lot of that kind of like tape trading, CD trading kind of thing. It's just all digitalized now. And so like my biggest thing, I'm a huge audio nerd, and my way of looking at it is if you're going to get it digital, it doesn't matter what format that you get it in. It's digital. So, I try my best to kind of like put up music on our end, like free to listen to.
Yeah.
Because I've always had the notion that like, you know, MP3s and stuff like that, someone can just fucking download them anyway. So that's never been kind of a thought in my mind. Obviously, me as like a musician, I have to make like some kind of money. So to like put it out there, it's got to do something. Like I have a kid and shit. But the amount of emphasis on music over image with this digital age movement is like a really great thing for me. Part of the reason why like Pando didn't want to put so much emphasis on images because I can't stand that shit. I don't like if you're creating um, audio art, I guess, you don't, there's no reason for an image to place yourself on this. It becomes a facade anyway. Like, how many fucking times have you seen these dudes who are big, burly, 40 something year old guys looking all grizzly and stoic in front of a camera for band photos, but then they go home and they play with their fucking kittens.
Right.
So, like, you're not fooling anything. So I really enjoy the feeling of like trade of information. I'm able to listen to all different kinds of music that I would never have been able to listen to. And especially like with this whole COVID thing right now, it's great. Like tons of people are just like looking for new things to do. And so like Pando would have never been noticed at all if it wasn't for, the digital movement of information. No one would have ever thought to listen to anything like this. A lot of people tend to like, from my experience, a lot of like the same tones and progressions and things like that because it's comfortable familiarity. So when things are different from what is already there, people are like uncomfortable at first. And then usually from like repeated listens, they get like comfortable with it. Unless you have like the oddballs like us or something like that, where we're just like really into just like something super different.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's been great.
Cool. So would you ever want to play live with this Cave Dweller project, or is it something that's going to just be a studio project?
I've thought about playing live before. Matt and I have both thought about playing live before. We got invited by this guy who was really the reason why we got notice when we put out the first album, The Negligible Senescence, to play at Roadburn. He invited us to go play Roadburn Festival. And me and Matt, we're like fucking poor. we don't have, like, I have a kid, my son was like just born at the time, so I couldn't like go fly off and go like dude it like awesome. I definitely want to do that. I have a huge wanderlust. But yeah, we've talked quite a bit about doing live shows. I've talked quite a bit about doing live shows, and the problem that I always have that I end up weighing out that becomes like this huge, back and forth struggle in my head is all the time is when you're making music, it's about audio. And when you're doing now a performance, it's a performance. You're now talking about a visual art. And so when I think of like visual art, I think of like contemporary art or installation art, things that you see in art galleries, MoCA, Massachusetts Modern Contemporary Art Museum, MoMA in New York, the big galleries.
Yeah.
Performative artwork, artists like Marina Abramovich and things like that. It's a completely different ball game when you're playing in front of people. And it would be one thing to just go on a stage and just play music in front of people. But that's never been what Pando is.
Sure.
And that's never been my thought of what I would want Cave Dweller to be. If I were to do a live set as Cave Dweller, it would probably be more or less me trying my damn best to invite people into like my home space. It would be trying to create some kind of atmosphere to bring them with me wherever I am when I'm feeling these types of movements. I wouldn't want to just play music in front of people. I would be more interested in inviting people within a group to play music with me, invite people from the crowd to just sit up, here's a frame drum, beat on this thing for X amount of time, and just join in, since that's the whole point of Cave Dweller is me feeling lonely and wanting that sense of connection. Yeah. So I would 100% want to do something more experimental like that, creating this atmosphere, this ritual for people to partake in. And especially with Pando, where Matt's a visual artist, there's no way in fucking hell we wouldn't want to have props or things that are theatrical, something just to put emphasis on the artwork, the visual artwork. So that's always been something that we've kind of struggled with.
Cool.
But yeah, no, it's definitely been a thought in our mind.
You and I are very like-minded like that. When I perform by myself, I will never perform on a stage, and it drives the venue nuts. Like, I go in the center of the room and I make people in a circle go around me, and I perform within them, and I use their energy. Like, you will never, like, yeah, it's like, it's the only way I can do it. And I use props and all the stuff too. Yeah, like, that's the only way I can do it. They're like, "You're not going to play on the stage?" I was like, "No." And they're like, "Well, what are you going to do?" "Just watch." Like, know, all I need you to do is turn that microphone on. The rest is all up to me. Like that, like, cool, awesome. So my last question before we close this out is, I ask every artist, band, whatever, the same question, and I kind of want to see what. And this is specifically not towards Pando; it's towards Cave Dweller, just because, like, I really just would love to know what you would do with this. So let's say you could have any artist or musician or composer rework Cave Dweller music and make it their own. Who would you want it to be and why?
Holy shit. Wow.
This is the response I get all the time, so it's not fucking.
Can it be dead people?
Doesn't matter. Anybody. I get some of the strangest things. Sometimes it's not even musical people. Like, you can, anybody, like, who would you love to see try and make a re-envisioned of Cave Dweller?
Okay. Well, I would want Matt to create an installation piece of it.
Okay.
And bring Robbie Basho back from the dead to do the guitar chord progressions. Have Johnny Cash do the vocals.
Wow.
And have John Coltrane's drummer do the improv sections.
Nice. Awesome.
I think that would be it. That would do Walter Goodman the service.
Nice. Very cool. So again, Adam, been absolutely awesome talking to you. Thank you so very much for doing this. I will make sure that there are links to your Bandcamp, to your Facebook pages, so the world can kind of communicate with you and enjoy your music as much as I have been enjoying it. If you ever do come out to the West, because I'm in Phoenix and I know it's the desert and it's a polar opposite of the world, but we will definitely hang out. I will buy you a beer and you and I will bullshit about things that are probably no interest to anybody but you or I in this
Hell
world.
Yeah, man. So, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So like I said, but again, this is Clint from the Doorway 2, hanging out with Adam of Pando and Cave Dweller. Thank you so very much for doing this tonight, man.
Thanks a lot, dude.